Ambassador Charles entered the Grand Council chamber of Veshrai, a single white envelope held between his fingers.
You call this a final warning, human? A piece of paper?
Open it. Earth's final communication.
If you proceed with the sanction vote, every system on your capital will read this message.
Then Vexus laughed, a sharp, barking sound that echoed off the crystalline walls. The council joined him, the chamber filled with jeering laughter.
The council will now vote on the sanction measure.
The holographic tally lighted up. Every vote was a cold yes. Charles turned and walked toward the chamber exit, his footsteps steady on the polished floor. Behind him, the laughter echoed, but at the corner of his mouth, there was the faintest hint of a smile. 6 hours later, the capital world Veshrai lay unaware beneath a violet dusk. Crystalline towers gleamed, hover cars threaded the airways, and the city pulsed with ordinary industry. A Veshrai citizen scrolled through a news feed on a translucent personal communicator, oblivious to the countdown. In the central plaza, a giant holographic billboard cycled through colorful advertisements for off-world holidays. Traffic management systems hummed with green indicators, guiding thousands of vehicles along their routes. Inside a domestic kitchen, a smart refrigerator displayed a family's evening meal plan, its screen placid and blue. A bedside clock glowed with the time, soft numerals marking another peaceful evening in the capital. In an elevator, a vertical screen showed floor numbers, the ride smooth and uneventful. The whole city, every screen, every chip, rested in dormant trust. Exactly 6 hours after Charles had walked out, and 10 seconds later, every one of them would deliver the message that the council had laughed at. It began without warning. Personal communicators flickered and died, then blazed back with a single repeating phrase. In the central plaza, the massive holographic billboard switched from holiday ads to 3 words, glowing in rows: "We warned you." Traffic control seized. Every guidance screen turned into the same message. Operators froze in alarm. Household appliances joined. The kitchen refrigerator discarded its meal plan, each screen now a silent herald. A bedside clock reshaped its numbers into "We warned you." The sleeper woke in terror, pressing hands to her ears. Elevators halted mid-floor. Their displays no longer showed levels but those 3 words. Trapped passengers beat the walls. On the streets, drivers lost control as every dashboard and billboard flashed in unison. Hover cars collided, pedestrians fled. The financial sector plunged into chaos. Trading screens erupted with "We warned you." Markets plummeted in freefall. For 10 seconds, the words held, then vanished, leaving devices normal. Only the screaming remained. Minutes later, the Grand Council was recalled to emergency session. Speaker Vexus stared at the reports, his laughter a bitter memory.
Find out how they did this. Every screen in the capital displayed that message. There must be a breach.
But every scan returned the same result. No external intrusion. The signal had not come from outside. Technicians traced the anomaly to Veshrai manufactured primary processor chips. The code was not injected, it was part of the original design. Deep, within each crystalline chip, a dormant subroutine lay coiled, identical in millions of devices across the capital.
Every chip. The entire manufacturing line has been compromised.
The implication crashed over the council. Every device built in the last 2 decades, from military systems to household appliances, was a potential weapon.
Bring the human ambassador back to this chamber. Now.
A technician confirmed the worst. The code could not be removed. It was embedded from the moment of manufacture, impossible to erase without destroying the chips.
20 years of exports. They planned this long before the council even formed.
By the time the emergency session ended, a summons was already on its way to the human embassy. The council had no answers, only a growing dread. Ambassador Charles returned to the Grand Council Hall, but today the vast chamber stood nearly empty, its crystalline tiers silent. He was escorted to a smaller private meeting room, where Speaker Vexus already waited at a polished table, his face tight with fury.
You call this a warning? You paralyzed our capital, crashed our markets.
Crashed nothing. Your systems are operational. That was simply a message, the one you laughed at.
A message buried inside our own processors. That is a hostile act, Ambassador.
You passed sanctions. We delivered on our warning. That is not hostility. It is reliability. Consider it a flag. A demonstration. Your infrastructure listens to us, precisely when we choose.
What else is hidden? What else can you trigger?
That is not a question I will answer.
Charles rose and walked out, leaving Vexus staring at the door, his composure crumbling in the silence. Vexus sat alone in the meeting room for a long minute, then activated his communicator with a trembling claw.
I want a full audit of every HFY manufactured chip in the capital. Every system. Now.
Technicians fanned out. The chips were in everything: traffic grids, military networks, life support, even children's toys. The dormant code was identical in every instance, a perfect replica from a single master template.
Then purge it. I don't care how. Remove that subroutine from every processor.
But when they attempted deletion, the code regenerated within seconds, rewriting itself from hidden backup sectors.
It's alive. It's like the code is fighting back.
Panic gripped the council. They were no longer in control of their own world. In his embassy office, Charles watched the feed with a patient, knowing calm. Vexus stared at the failed audit reports, the truth settling in. Earth had built a cage around them, and they had never noticed. Vexus's next summons was not a command, but a plea. Charles returned to the private room, his expression unreadable.
How did you do it? Tell me how this is possible.
20 years ago, Earth identified a dependency. You manufactured the chips, we provided the blueprint.
In a factory on Earth, engineers had embedded the dormant subroutine directly into the silicon before fabrication. The code lay silent, replicating across every chip ever produced, waiting for a trigger only humanity controlled.
You contaminated our entire supply chain before first contact.
Precisely. The warning was a feature, not a hack. Your infrastructure has been ours for 2 decades.
Charles withdrew a second white envelope from his coat and slid it across the table.
This contains the next step. I suggest you consider it carefully.
He stood and walked out, leaving Vexus alone with the unopened envelope, his hands frozen above it. Vexus did not reach for the envelope. He sat motionless for nearly an hour, then ordered the room sealed.
20 years of silent infection. What could the next step possibly be?
The first day passed, then the second. The council demanded answers he did not have.
There is nothing to share. The ambassador gave us a paper and walked away.
That night, he remained in his private quarters, staring at the envelope on his nightstand.
They know I am weak. If I open it, and it is worse than the first.
Outside, the capital remained on edge. Markets wobbled. Citizens feared another flash of white words.
Advisors, what do you suggest? No one can predict these humans.
The silence from Earth was the loudest answer. Charles did not call, did not gloat, did not appear. By the third day, Vexus had not slept. The envelope sat exactly where Charles had placed it, a growing fracture in his mind. On the morning of the 4th day, Vexus called an emergency session of the full Grand Council, the white envelope clutched in his hand.
I have not opened the human's second communication. I will do so now, in front of you all.
With trembling claws, he tore the seal and extracted a single slip of white paper, no larger than his palm. He turned it over. The words were simple, etched in dark human script. We can also delete. Dead silence fell. Vexus's hand dropped, the paper fluttering to the floor.
Delete. They can erase everything. Our records, our data, our entire civilization's memory.
The counselors stared, frozen. The implication was not war. It was erasure without a shot.
They could collapse our government, our banks, our identity. In seconds.
The chamber erupted in panicked shouts, but Vexus did not hear them. He was staring at the fallen paper, the weight of 20 years pressed down. Humanity's patience had been absolute, and now so was their leverage. Within the hour, technical experts confirmed the threat. The same embedded subroutine could be triggered to purge every storage sector instead of displaying a message.
Contact the human ambassador. Tell him we must negotiate immediately.
The reply from the human embassy arrived not from Charles himself, but through a formal note. Earth will speak only after the sanction is repealed.
Repeal. That would be a surrender on live broadcast.
But the Council had no choices left. Every system could be wiped, every record erased. The Council itself could cease to exist in any functional sense. Debate raged for hours. Several councilors argued for military retaliation, but the same question silenced them. How do you strike an enemy you cannot see? Vexus retreated to his office, the two envelopes lying on the desk before him, one already a scar, the other still bleeding. And in the embassy, Charles waited. No broadcast, no gloating, only the quiet that makes an empire fall. The scheduled vote to repeal the sanctions was placed on the council agenda for the following morning. Vexus had no choice but to watch it scheduled, his power reduced to a signature he had not yet given. The next morning, the council chamber was packed. No councilor dared miss a session that could end their world.
I will not pretend this is a victory. We are cornered.
Some argued to test Earth's resolve. A few demanded blood. The chamber divided. Then the demonstration came. The city's weather archives, a trivial public database, went blank mid-session. Replaced by nothingness, silence slammed down. They had been warned they could delete, and now a piece of their history was gone.
They are watching. This is a warning shot, not the war.
He called for an immediate vote on the repeal. No more debate. The holographic voting panels ignited around the chamber, each seat awaiting a choice. Vexus stared at his own panel, his claw hovering, the weight of his civilization pressing against the thin air. The motion to repeal sanctions was live. The galaxy would know before noon. The tally was almost immediate. The repeal passed with a trembling majority.
The sanctions are lifted. By order of this council, the measures against Earth are nullified.
The announcement broadcast across HFY, across the galaxy. It was not a victory. It was a confession. In the embassy, Charles received the feed without reaction. He waited a full minute before activating his own link.
Earth acknowledges the Council's decision. This is the necessary first step.
He offered nothing more. No threat, no promise. The silence itself was the message. The galaxy took notice. On a dozen worlds, diplomats scrambled to reassess humanity.
They gave us our answer. It feels like chains.
Charles stood from his desk, looking out at the HFY skyline. The game was not over. It had simply entered a new phase. And somewhere in the council archive, 2 small white envelopes were preserved, unmistakable evidence of the day humanity proved it could wait longer than any empire. In a secure Earth briefing room, Charles faced the senior officials who had authorized the 20-year plan. No celebration awaited him. Only the quiet satisfaction of a mission executed exactly as intended.
The deletion threat was never genuine. It was a psychological instrument. The capacity was the weapon.
Charles explained the wager. Fear of total loss would always outweigh the pride of defiance.
We embedded a message that could not be removed. Then let their own imagination do the work.
The weather archive erasure had been a final nudge, not a prelude to war.
The code will remain dormant. A silent guardian, reminding them of what we chose not to do.
An official asked if Earth would ever activate the deletion for real. Charles paused.
Number. The threat achieves more than the act. We won the day we delivered the second envelope.
The meeting ended. Earth had not fired a shot, but now held a seat at every galactic table. The quiet victory was complete. Back on HFY, the council chambers turned cold. Councilors who once cheered Vexus now avoided his eyes. A motion was raised to reduce his executive authority. It passed without debate.
They blame me for a catastrophe. none of them could have predicted.
He became a scapegoat. Speaker in name only, his council ignored, his presence tolerated. Late at night, Vexus sat alone in the darkened council chamber, the two opened envelopes on the seat beside him.
I laughed at their warning. I made it a joke.
The silence of the hall pressed in, broken only by the faint hum of dormant systems, systems he could no longer trust. Outside, the city had adapted. The panic faded into a grim new normal. But inside Vexus, something had fractured permanently. He understood now. Earth had won the moment Charles first smiled. The rest was just formality. He would remain in office, a living monument to the day his civilization learned what patience could do. The news traveled faster than any ship. Within hours, every major civilization knew of Earth's silent strike. Species that had dismissed humanity as weak recalculated. Fear mingled with grudging respect. Urgent diplomatic messages flooded Earth's embassies. Some demanded explanations. Others proposed quiet alliances. The Council's closest allies issued tepid statements, distancing themselves from Vexus's failed leadership. One veteran ambassador was heard to murmur, "They did nothing and won everything." Earth remained silent, letting the implications spread like a virus through interstellar diplomacy. Military analysts across a dozen star systems rewrote their threat assessments. Humanity was no longer an unknown. It was a known danger. The Council's influence waned. Worlds they had patronized began to question old allegiances. Earth had not asked for a seat at the table. The seat had been carved out of fear. The new era belonged to patience, and humanity had proven it could wait longer than any empire. In the embassy tower, Charles stood at a window, watching the Veshrai skyline pulse with indifferent lights.
20 years of waiting, and it ended in 10 seconds of words.
He recalled the engineers, men and women who had planted the seed, never knowing if it would bloom.
They trusted the plan. They trusted that patience was its own weapon.
There was no celebration in his chest, only the weight of having wielded a blade that never needed to strike.
I am the architect of fear, not war. A strange victory.
He thought of Vexus, broken in his empty chamber, and felt no joy, only the grim confirmation that the plan worked.
History will say we won without a fight, but the fight was in the waiting.
He turned from the window. The city below had no idea how close it had come to oblivion, and it would never know. That was the final quiet cruelty of the plan. The treaty session was convened, not with celebration but with the grim air of a defeated negotiation.
Earth's terms are simple. A mutual non-aggression pact. Fair trade. No reparations.
You ask for nothing else?
We have everything we need.
The councilors voted, and the treaty was ratified without a single objection. A holographic document shimmered, and Vexus placed his signature upon it. His hand steady, but his eyes empty. Charles signed as well, his pen moving without flourish beneath the Earth flag. The new order was sealed. Humanity asked for nothing beyond what it already held, respect born of fear. In the corridors afterward, alien diplomats avoided human eyes, not from hatred, but from the uncomfortable knowledge of vulnerability. The treaty was a monument, not to friendship, but to the day humanity proved it could delete an empire, and chose not to. After the ceremony, Vexus found Charles in a quiet corridor, away from the lingering diplomats.
I underestimated your kind. I thought you were just another species we could manage.
Many do. That was our advantage.
The code, the deletion capacity. Can it ever be removed?
It was never about deletion. It was about the capacity. That remains.
Vexus closed his eyes. The sword would hang over his civilization forever.
I understand. You have won, not with weapons, but with the threat of what you could do.
A threat that will never be used, as long as your council remembers this day.
Without another word, Vexus turned and walked away, his silhouette shrinking down the corridor. The 2 envelopes lay in his office like a permanent scar, a reminder of the day patience became the deadliest weapon. Ambassador Charles walked away from the council hall, his footsteps echoing in the empty embassy corridor.
There is nothing behind me, worth a final glance.
In the speaker's office, 2 white envelopes lay on a dark desk, untouched since the council session. They had delivered a 10-second message that toppled an empire without a shot. Charles boarded the shuttle, his expression unreadable, a man who had shaped history with paper and patience. The embassy staff watched him go, aware they had witnessed something quiet and irreversible. The envelopes remained, a silent indictment of Veshray's arrogance. Humanity had not conquered. It had simply waited longer than anyone else could. Outside, the flag of Earth snapped in the alien wind, a symbol no longer of weakness but of supreme restraint. And the galaxy, for the first time, understood that the deadliest weapon was not a fleet, but a promise kept. The council chamber remained empty for days, a hollow monument to a vanished bravado. Vexus would return to his duties, but something vital had been extracted, the certainty of his own infallibility on Earth. No parades were held. The news simply announced a new trade agreement with the Veshrai Council, the implications humming beneath the words. Charles rarely spoke of those days. When asked, he would only say, "We delivered a letter and kept our promise." The 2 envelopes were eventually framed in the council archives, a cautionary exhibit for every new envoy. In the galaxy's memory, the silent strike became a legend, a tale of how humanity weaponized nothing more than patience and a dormant line of code. And in the quiet corridors of power, a new understanding settled. The deadliest empires do not roar, they wait. For 20 years, Earth had planted a seed. In 10 seconds, it had reaped a harvest of fear and respect. The code remains dormant, a silent sentinel in every Veshrai machine, waiting for a command that will never come, because the threat alone is enough. And so the galaxy learned the most terrifying lesson of all, that the ultimate weapon is not what you do, but what you can prove you are capable of doing. Years later, the children of Veshrai learned about the silent strike in history lessons, their teachers speaking in hushed tones. On Earth, Charles grew old in a quiet office, overlooking a sea he rarely visited. The tides as patient as he had been. The 2 envelopes remained in their archive case, permanently sealed behind glass, never to be touched again. New alien envoys were brought to see them, one opened, one torn, and told the story. This is what humanity did with a piece of paper. Charles never wrote his memoirs, but his successor found a note in his desk. The best wars are the ones you never have to fight. The dormant code still rests in every Veshrai machine, a silent promise that needs no words. And somewhere in the vast dark between stars, 1,000 civilizations remember the day the humans taught them what patience could build. No fleets were launched, no shots were fired, only words delivered and kept. Charles died an old man, but his final smile, some said, was exactly the same as the one he wore leaving the council chamber. For humanity had won by doing nothing, and in doing so had become the deadliest force the galaxy had ever known. The years smoothed the sharp edges of that day, but the lesson never dulled. In the council hall, now a museum, the exhibit of 2 small envelopes drew more visitors than any other. A young Veshrai child once asked why her people feared a species that had never fired a shot. The answer was always the same. They didn't need to. That was the terror of it. On 100 worlds, diplomats still paused when a human entered the room. The code remained, a silent witness to a day when words rewrote the balance of power. No fleet could match it. No armada could threaten like an unopened envelope. For the deadliest thing in the universe, the galaxy learned, is not a weapon you can see, but a promise you can keep. And in the stillness of the archive, the 2 envelopes waited, never aging, never breaking their silence. The final warning had been delivered, and it would echo forever.